Hi again then guys, and welcome to my 6th pick in a series of my top 30 most wanted vehicles for the future, really, of the GranTurismo franchise. These are the 30 vehicles which I have hand selected that are above all others. The cars which, if they were on the game, even if only some of them were on a future GranTurismo game, would definitely make me want to buy it. Now, in this particular pick, we are discussing a slightly more well-known vehicle. It's a supercar, the Maserati MC12. One of my personal favourite cars, definitely one of my favourite supercars. I would also say one of the most beautiful cars ever made. I know that's kind of controversial. Some people don't like the MC12. I personally do not understand that, but each to his own. And it's a very interesting model, and it's a car which you can very easily gloss over as just another supercar. But the brilliance of the MC12 is when you look beyond the obvious on-paper spec. Because on paper it is an impressive car. It's mechanically based on the Ferrari Enzo. But it is more expensive than the Enzo, rarer, and designed for a different purpose. Now, as far as the engine, it shares roughly the same 6-litre, mid-mounted, naturally aspirated V12. It produces less power, though, and less torque, around 620 horsepower compared to the Enzo's roughly 660. So it is a significantly less powerful car, especially considering that both of these cars, that is the Enzo and the MC12 of course, came out at around 2003, 2004, that kind of time period. Back then, supercars were much more few and far between, really. Nowadays we have quite a few. Back then, the Enzo hadn't quite been released yet, Koenigsegg was still getting on their feet, and cars like the SLR and the Celine S7 were only just hitting the market. So the Enzo and the MC12 really stood out. And the competition that they had with cars like the Lamborghini Murcielago and various other vehicles, the Carrera GT, it was a good time for supercars. But at the same time, companies like Maserati and Ferrari would always have an edge over many of those other companies, especially companies like Gumpert or Mosler, because people naturally know more about the companies. If you ask someone who isn't particularly into cars, have they heard of Gumpert or Mosler? Probably not. Have they heard of Ferrari? Yeah, of course they have. Have they heard of Maserati? Yeah, most people would probably say yes. You may get one or two that don't, but not that many. So they immediately have that more main market appeal. And that can sometimes hurt a supercar. It can make them watered down. More of a commercial supercar than a pure ultimate supercar. Did that happen to these? Well, certainly not. The Enzo is known as being an incredible Ferrari, an incredible supercar. It was named after Enzo Ferrari himself, giving some idea of just how good it had to be. And it was what the LaFerrari had to live up to. And the Enzo made a great benchmark for Ferrari. Many people don't think it looks as good as many other Ferraris. I may agree, it's not necessarily as artistic looking as some other Ferraris. It's certainly not a curvy, beautiful car in the traditional sense. It's more of a calculated looking machine, more of a racing look. But funnily enough, it never actually did that. It never raced. It was turned into the FXX, which does race in a one-make series, but the Enzo itself never became a traditional race car, and it may have been an obvious choice to do so, but it never did. The MC12, however, was developed for that one purpose entirely. The Enzo was designed to be purely the ultimate Ferrari supercar. The MC12 was not just designed to be the ultimate Maserati supercar. It automatically would be, but that wasn't its main goal. Its main goal was what Maserati has always had as a goal, and that is motorsports. The MC12 was first and foremost like the McLaren F1, a road-going homologation to race. And it's a successful race car, and continues to be, as far as I know, to this day. Now the MC12 is far more rare than the Enzo. The Enzo, I believe there were around 1,000 of them made, something like that. I believe it may have been 999. The MC12, there's only 25 of, so it is a lot rarer. And one thing that many people don't seem to realise about the MC12 is that it's actually an open top. You could very easily mistake it as being a double model, a hard top and a convertible. That's actually not the case. It's what they call a targa top, which means that you can remove the central panel, much like a Ferrari F355 or the open top NSX. And that's a pretty cool feature, because it means you can take the roof off, also like a Koenigsegg, they have a very similar feature, and have it as that open top super tourer, if you will, for taking around Monaco or places like that. But you could fit the roof, put up the windows, and take it around the track like a race car. And that is very interestingly where the MC12 is actually superior to the Enzo. The Enzo is more powerful, and it is faster in a straight line. It does 0 to 60 in roughly 3.7 seconds and has a top speed of around 218. The MC12 is slower than that. The 0 to 60 is roughly the same, about 3.7 seconds, but the top speed is only about 205, so over 10 miles per hour slower. And one of the reasons for that is it has more downforce, that very large, almost Ferrari F50 style rear wing, as well as the much longer front and rear deck. In fact, the MC12 is around 1 foot longer than the Enzo, which, considering that the Enzo itself isn't exactly a small car, is a big difference to have. Another visual difference with the MC12 is that it doesn't have a rear window. The Enzo doesn't exactly have a traditional rear window because you can see the engine right behind you, but it does still have a usable rear window. The MC12 doesn't. You can't see anything out the back, and that harkens back to cars like the Mercedes CLK GTR, Lotus Elise GT1 and Porsche 911 GT1, which also didn't have rear windows, that very focused race car style, which I personally love. It makes them incredibly impractical for parking or driving on normal roads, but it makes them look fantastic, especially with the louvered air outlets and roof scoop that also accompanies those cars in a very GT1 style. Now the funny thing is, even though, as I said, the Enzo is quicker in a straight line, by far, when it comes to top speed, around the track, the MC12 is actually faster. Because, as I said earlier, the Enzo was designed to be very much a street-level supercar. The MC12 wasn't. The MC12 is essentially a race car for the road, similar to vehicles like the Gumper Apollo or Mosler. And as such, Evo magazine tested those two cars as well as a Zonda F, a Koenigsegg CCX and a Porsche Carrera GT around the Nuremberg Ring, and the MC12 beat the Enzo. In fact, the Enzo actually broke when driving around the Nuremberg Ring. Its suspension broke. The MC12 consistently was faster up until the point that the Enzo was out of commission. So not only does the MC12 set better laps than the Enzo, but it is more adept at racing without braking, which is a true testament to the fact that it is built for competition. Now these days an MC12 will set you back massive amounts of money, around 3 times the value of its original price, and the Enzo is also similar, but the MC12 is also rarer, due to the fact that there were only 25, and I suspect that at least a couple of those have probably smashed. Those 25 incidentally do not include the race models. There are extra race models which of course are not street registered. That's also not including the Corsa version, which is Maserati's equivalent to the FXX. Overall, the reason why I would love to see the MC12 on GranTurismo is for a number of reasons. I am a massive Maserati fan. It's one of my favourite brands. I think they make fantastic looking cars that are oddball to some degree. They are similar, I would say, to cars like Spiker and Pagani. They offer that eccentric twist on the mainstream exotic. But also for the reason that we already have the Enzo, and it's a brilliant car. But the MC12 could be one of the best track-going supercars on GranTurismo, easily. Not necessarily the best, but definitely one of the best. I suspect that price-wise it would probably sit at around the same as the Enzo. I should think probably 1 million credits, and that sounds about right. Maybe 1.2 at a push, but I suspect that it would cost the same as the Enzo. As far as PP, I would expect it to be around maybe the 580 or 590 PP region. As I said earlier, around 620 horsepower, and around the track, potentially an absolute monster. Another reason why I want it on the game is the way it looks. It's, in my opinion, as I said earlier, a fantastic looking car. I would put it up there with the Zonda and some other supercars like that as being the best looking cars ever made. To me, the MC12 is essentially a piece of art with a steering wheel, even down to its super iconic paint job. That blue and white is one of the most recognisable liveries of any supercar. And to top it all off, every single game that features the MC12 treats it with great respect. Test Drive Unlimited, Forza, and various other games always have the MC12 as a highly expensive and fantastic looking, sounding, and driving machine. And I would love to see the MC12 make it into GranTurismo. As far as the chances that it has of getting in, I actually think the MC12's got a pretty good chance. We now have the Enzo, Maserati is now featured on the game with the GranTurismo, and I think we actually have a reasonably decent chance of seeing the MC12 on a future GranTurismo, potentially even GT Sport, because that game is of course more geared towards competition racing, and the MC12 is a competition machine. We may end up getting a race version instead or first, but I really, really hope that we get the road version at some point. But that's it for this pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.